So the countdown is on for the draw for AFCON 2025. It will be happening on 27th January. That is in Morocco. But I'm coming to predict which group is going to be a possibly strongest group and also the possible weakest group from the draw. So stay tuned. I don't know what I'm doing. All right, so welcome back. As I said earlier, this is just a prediction. I'm making a prediction for the possible the strongest group we could have, that is for the draw AFCON 2025, and then the possible weakest group we could have. So let's start first with the weakest group, the possible weakest group, and these are all the teams qualified to the AFCON in different pots. So we have pot 1, based on the FIFA rankings, we have pot 1, pot 2, pot 3, and pot 4. So let's first deal with pot 1, and we have 6 countries over here, 6 countries making pot 1. Based on FIFA rankings, of course, we have Morocco, we also have Senegal, we have Egypt, Algeria, Nigeria, and then Ivory Coast as the 6 teams in pot 1. I have 2 teams in this pot who I think are the possibly weakest teams in this pot. And when I say weakest, it doesn't mean they are bad, but then as compared to the other teams in this pot, I think if you are ranking, those teams will be the weakest. And it's between Nigeria and Ivory Coast for me. But I have to choose one. I have to choose only one. So in choosing only one, it goes with Nigeria as the weakest team in this pot. So we move to pot 2 again, another 6 teams in this pot. In this pot, we have, that is Cameroon, Mali, Tunisia, South Africa, DR Congo, and then Burkina Faso. So in this pot, I had 2 teams also who were looking like the possibly 2 weakest teams in this pot. One is Tunisia, and that's because if you look at their recent performances, they've been very appalling. They lost to Gambia, they lost to Comoros, haven't really been playing at their best in recent times. And then Burkina Faso, who recently even lost to Malawi in the AFCON qualifiers. So these are the 2 teams I think are the 2 possible weakest teams, but I have to choose only one, and that's Burkina Faso. Then we get to pot 3, another 6 teams in this pot we have, that is Gabon, Angola, Zambia, Uganda, Equatorial Guinea, and then Benin. These are the 6 teams in this pot. I have to choose only one team as my weakest, but I also had two countries I was debating on which is the weakest, and one was Uganda, the other one was Benin Republic, but I had to choose only one out of the 2, and I had to think, if Uganda play against Benin, who is, I think most likely Benin will win. So my weakest is Uganda in this group over here. And then our final pot 4, also had 6 teams in this pot. We had Mozambique, we had Comoros, we had Tanzania, we had Sudan, we had Zimbabwe, then we had Botswana in this pot. In this pot, I didn't really think there was any competition for who is the weakest in this pot. It was straightforward Botswana for me. Botswana, the weakest team in this pot for me. So after doing everything, this is the final group we had. The possible weakest group in the AFCON qualifiers, and it was a group of Nigeria, Burkina Faso, Uganda, and then Botswana. These were the 4 teams in the possible weakest group. And I think this tells how strong African football has grown, because this group, even though it's the weakest, it still looks competitive. But I mean, based on all the teams available, this was the weakest I could bring forth. So now we are done with the weakest. Let's move to the strongest possible group in the AFCON qualifiers. So this is, as some would say, the group of death, the possible group of death in the AFCON qualifiers. Let's start from pot 1 again. And you've seen the teams, I've mentioned them already: Morocco, Senegal, Egypt, Algeria, Nigeria, and then Ivory Coast. So in this pot, the strongest team, I think on paper, maybe it could have been Senegal, but then with Morocco being the host nation, I had to choose them as my strongest team in this was the host nation. They've had very, very impressive performances all throughout the qualifiers. So I think Morocco is the strongest team in pot 1 for me here. So that was the first country I chose, Morocco. Then in pot 2, you've seen pot 2 again. We had, that is Cameroon, Mali, Tunisia, South Africa, DR Congo, and then Burkina Faso. Again, I had 2 countries who I was debating over who was the strongest in this pot. One was South Africa, because I think they've really done very well, impressively, in their few games ever since after the AFCON. Then also Cameroon, who, after they let go of their coach, that is Figo Beksong, have sort of transformed. They've been transformed completely. So it was a battle between the 2, South Africa, Cameroon. But I had to go with Cameroon. Cameroon is my strongest team in pot 2. So that is my strongest Cameroon. Then in pot 3, We had another 6 countries in this pot too: Gabon, Angola, Zambia, Uganda, Equatorial Guinea, and Benin. So for the strongest in this pot, I didn't struggle. I didn't struggle to get the strongest team in this pot because I think they've shown consistency right from the AFCON through to this point now, and it's not a country than Angola. So Angola was my strongest team in pot 3 over here, and that was the country I settled on as the strongest. And then pot 4, we had another 6 countries in this pot 4, that is Mozambique, Comoros or Comoros Island, Tanzania, Sudan, Zimbabwe, and Botswana. So in pot 4, it was kind of a bit of a struggle, not much for a struggle, but a bit of a struggle because you check the performances of Mozambique, they've been impressive in the qualifiers. You check the performances of Sudan, they've been impressive in the qualifiers. Comoros, they've also been impressive in the qualifiers, but I had to choose one. And then if you check who has been more consistent, nobody comes close in this sport to Comoros in terms of consistency. So they were my best team in this sport. So the final outlook for that is the group of death, the possible group of death, or the possible strongest group we could have in the AFCON qualifiers was this: Morocco, Cameroon, Angola, and Comoros. This was the possible strongest group we could have in the AFCON qualifiers. And this group looks like it is strong. If you have a group like this, I mean, anybody can go home. It's possible you can even see host nation Morocco go home in a group like this because Comoros, they don't play. Angola, they don't play. Cameroon, they are transformed team. And Morocco, they are the host. So this is my possible strongest team. Let's see again the 2 groups I predicted. So on the left-hand side is the possible West group or the possible weakest group that is Nigeria, Burkina Faso, Uganda, and Botswana. Then on the right-hand side is the possible best or strongest group that is Morocco, Cameroon, Angola, and Comoros. Do you think this is a rare representation of that is the draw we'll be having, whether this can be the strongest or this can be the weakest? Let me know in the comment section, and you can also tell me in the comments which is your strongest group and which is your weakest group. Tell me that in the comments.